Call the Kitty Hawk Town Council order this Monday, February 2nd, 2015, at Kitty Hawk Town Hall. It is now 6 p.m. And welcome to everyone that's out tonight. It's been kind of nasty, but it did clear up, so we're still glad to see you here. It's supposed to get cold, though. Would you join us with a moment of silence and a pledge of the allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'm going to call for approval of the agenda. I think there's something to be removed.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, number 4, presentations, Outer Bank Sporting Events. I got a call from Linda Wood. They would like to defer that until the March meeting.
All right. Do I hear a second to that with the agenda change?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the agenda is changed. Next, we have some beach nourishment frequently asked questions. This has to do, of course, with ongoing answers to questions that people have been sending us with their emails, and we're trying to answer them as we get them. Next week, we have the hearing, and I expect we'll have a few people there that will still also have questions. Question, will this be a 5-year loan or a bond issue? Answer, the debt service or loan is required to be approved by the North Carolina Local Government Commission, which oversees all county or town applications for a banking financial instrument referred to as a special obligation bond. The financial consultant has projected a 3.5% rate in their 5-year calculation, subject to market change when or if the project moves forward. Question, will the special tax in municipal district, service districts A and B be frozen based on the 2015 assessed value? Answer, the debt service loan will be a fixed yearly amount owed to the lending institution. Under North Carolina statute, local government loans must be paid first from budgeted revenue. Because townwide assessed values are subject to yearly change caused by increased or decreased revenue, such as increased development or a recession, the MSD rates are calculated annually and adjusted to ensure sufficient funds are available to repay the annual debt service. That's an important point. Some folks think that it's a fixed rate through the 5-year period. We have to pay the debt, however, we have to fix the rates to do that. Question, will a property reevaluation occur during the 5-year loan payback? Answer, by North Carolina law, property reassessment must take place at least every 8 years. The last reassessment occurred in 2013. However, counties can reassess more often. At this time, there is no indication a reassessment will occur before 2021. We don't anticipate that, but it could happen. All right, that's all the ones I have for tonight, and it'll be the last ones I have before we have the public hearing. Next, we have public comment. Lynn, has anyone signed up?
No, sir.
Does anyone wish to speak at the public comment? All right, come on up. Come to the microphone, state your name, please.
Mr. Perry, members of the board, I ran into a situation this past 3 weeks ago, I believe it was, concerning being able to park at the public accesses and leave my equipment overnight. Many of you know that I work here. I've worked 7 days a week. I work in Kitty Hawk, Kill Devil Hills, all over the place. Now, I was asking the council, I'd like to ask the council if it would be possible just to park there in the wintertime. And, you know, trying to haul equipment back and forth is expensive, and I'm trying not to, you know, pass expenses to the clients that I deal with. I just want to get a little parking for the wintertime on. I didn't know if we could, you know, have it from one date to another date.
Well, the ordinance was put in place. You're parking, you're leaving your equipment, basically, commercial equipment, into a public parking area. And the ordinance says that that's for temporary use. It's not for a private or commercial endeavor. And we'd have to change the ordinance to do that. I'm not inclined to ask council to do that unless someone on this council tonight tells me that we should do that. But in any event, this is a public, your chance to speak to us. You've told us what your concern is, and we'll take it under advisement. We won't make any determination tonight for certain.
Yes, sir. Mr. Perry, the people on that street, I've met all of them, and I've helped pretty much everybody around there. And they all feel that if the equipment's there, it's, you know, the chances somebody's gonna come back to pick that equipment up. It kind of deters anybody that would want to break in their house or anything. That's another consideration, you know. It does actually help people if there is a presence there. It works out the same as having a police car parked periodically up and down through Kitty Hall. They just don't know when we're gonna show back up, pick our equipment up.
Okay?
I feel like it's helping people really, and it would help me a lot.
Can I ask him a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you talking about the parking lots, Bird Street, Lillian Street, the bathhouse?
No, ma'am, no, ma'am.
This
It's
is
just
the side streets.
the little gravel parking areas. In the past 3 weeks, I think I've seen maybe 5 cars there. There's nobody there in the wintertime. And in the summertime, I'm scared to leave my equipment there if they won't be there the next morning.
Yeah. Okay, so it's really the side, the cross streets that you're
Yes, ma'am, unless we
interested
have
in.
a hurricane or something like that, you know, and then pretty much we're needed over there. You know, everybody needs us there to clear their houses out. So we just need a little help from the council where we can get in there, do our job, help folks out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, there's someone else had their hands up? Come on up, please.
My name is Jesse Hines, and I live down Kitty Hawk Road here, and I'm just speaking about the West Village development that you'll be talking about tonight in planning. And I spoke last time that it came up with the previous developer. And so if you don't remember, my concern was basically that it seems like such a large, dense plan, really, to have 30 homes on that piece of property. I know it's a lot of acreage, but I know that I'm actually right behind it. I'm the neighbor on the east side of it. And so I look back there every day out of my window, and it's the canal or the creek really, that separates my house from that piece of property after Irene is probably quadrupled in size. And my wife and I have walked that property before, and it is so wet, and so I really don't see how it's possible to put 30 homes back there without really putting too much fill and breaking some of the guidelines and some of the rules there. And my other concern is just that 30 houses usually means 60 cars, 30 or 60 dogs, and just more noise pollution, more traffic on such a small road, Kitty Hawk Road. And it just seems like such a large project for such a volatile area. And then in kind of closing, just to represent Kitty Hawk and why I decided to, build a house here 10 years ago and become a citizen and decided to pay taxes here in Kitty Hawk was because I just admire Kitty Hawk Village for what it is. And to me, that project doesn't represent what Kitty Hawk is and so my desire, what I would ask you guys to do is just carefully consider how large this project is, and at the heart of it, what it means to Kitty Hawk, and really what it would mean to the community to have that much traffic, and of course the wetlands, and the ecological damage that it could pose to have such a large subdivision there in Kitty Hawk. So that is what I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mhm. Yes, ma'am, come up.
I just wanted to address the parking issue. I have a house next to Lillian Street access, and I understand overnight parking or commercial vehicles is not what anybody would want there. However, in the winter months, when you have some of these, like you say, the side streets, and there's the police car that is parked periodically to help deter the break-ins that we get up and down through Lindbergh and on the beach road, that maybe instead of changing an ordinance, maybe there could be some type of a permit or somehow, whatever the legalese is on that, that local tradesmen could apply for and show where they're working in that area. And because unfortunately, most of us have driveways that have one car, fit one car, and you can't leave a Bobcat or a whatever there. So maybe they could, during the winter months, have some type of a permit that could sit on the dashboard that would be approved from whoever is in charge of that to allow these people to possibly park there and help keep the business moving.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? No one else? Let the record show, no one else came forward at this part of the public hearing. All right, consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We had nothing removed from the consent of hearing. All right. Public hearing, and we have text amendment, public hearing. It's an application to amend section 42-252, and it basically deals with allowing truck rentals. Do I hear a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're now in public hearing, and it has two parts. The first part is dealing with the text amendment. The second part would be dealing with a conditional use part. So I want to take them one at a time, Rob. Brief us on the first part, please.
All right, as you mentioned, the first part is for a text amendment. It would allow truck rentals with a conditional use permit. It would have specific conditions applied to it. They're all listed out in your staff report, dealing with the amount of parking spaces, the types of vehicles that would be allowed to be used, hours of operation, limits on maintenance work to be done. Just as kind of a background, in 2013, the town council voted unanimously to deny a similar text amendment. There was an application to add vehicle rentals as a conditional use to the BC1 zoning district. This one kind of differentiates itself from the previous one in a few ways. The current proposal proposes to allow truck rentals in the BC3 district. There's only 3 properties in Kitty Hawk that are zoned as BC3. That's the Walmart, Shoreside Center, and Home Depot. So the truck rentals would be limited to a smaller area of town. You wouldn't see them all throughout the town. The current text amendment would not permit any additional signage associated with the truck rentals, and the current proposal would permit a larger rental operation than the 7 vehicle limit from the prior proposal. The current one, this proposal would allow 6% of the total parking spaces and a maximum of 25 parking spaces to be dedicated to the truck rental accessory business. Presently, vehicle rental operations are not permitted, not a permitted use in any commercial zoning district in town. As I mentioned, there was the previous text amendment review. During that time, the Planning and Inspections Department became aware that the Home Depot had established a sizable side business renting large equipment and trucks to customers. After consultation with the town attorney, staff notified Home Depot that the truck rental business is classified as a separate distinct use, and it's not currently permitted in the BC3 zoning district. So that's kind of what brought us to this point. They're trying to get a resolution to that, to get back into compliance. Looking at other local communities, none of the other incorporated towns in the area have any specific requirements regarding vehicle rentals. Dare County, they allow them in specific districts. They don't have any listed conditions or standards. And Currituck County, they allow automotive sales and rentals with a list of requirements for them to follow. After analyzing the applicant's proposal, staff has suggested one additional condition to be listed in the conditional use permit section. The proposed ordinance should include a requirement that the truck rental spaces can only take up parking spaces in excess of the minimum required spaces for the principal business on site. Using the Home Depot as an example, they currently have on site, I think, 393 parking spaces, and by our parking requirements, they're only required to have 377, I think it is. So regardless of what the 6% of parking spaces or the 25 maximum is, they could only use that number in between their minimum requirement and the amount that they actually have. In this case, it comes out to 22 spaces that they'd be requesting to use it for. The CAMA land use plan does not address the issue of vehicle rental businesses. And at the December 11th planning board meeting, the planning board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the proposed text amendment. And the applicant for both this conditional use permit, they are snowed in New Jersey. They were hoping to be here tonight, but they couldn't make it down. So any questions, I'll try to answer to the best of my ability for it.
All right. Has anyone signed up?
No, sir.
No? Does anyone want to speak before we ask questions here? No? Anyone on council have questions of Rod?
Yes, sir.
You're all satisfied with the content of what's been placed before you?
Yes, sir.
The one difference of the previous denial was it was in a different zone that would have affected a much larger area of town, whereas this is consolidated to and limited to the size. That was the principal difference. And I believe that's what made the difference in what we're doing. All right, what I'd like to do, because the next one is a conditional use, and we have to swear anybody, I'd like to close this part of the public hearing, and we'll address this one, and then we'll go back into public hearing for the next part. Do I hear a motion to go
So moved.
back into regular session? All right. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All right, council, what do you want to do with this particular one? Do I hear a motion to approve or deny?
Mr. Mayor, I recommend approval of the proposed text amendments allowing vehicles rentals as a conditional permitted use in the shopping center district, BC3 zoning district, subject to the condition proposed by the applicant with the addition of the staff, where's it at? With the proposed ordinance should include a requirement that the truck rental spaces can only take up parking spaces in excess of the minimum required spaces for the principal business on the site. The board has found this proposal to be consistent with the town-adopted land use plan.
Second.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I moved to sorry. I moved to adopt the
Let me
proposed
stop you
text.
just a
Hold
minute.
on.
Again.
You were reading the planning board recommendation.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Okay.
this is council recommendation.
Okay. I move to adopt the proposed text amendment in section 42-252C of the Kitty Hawk Town Code to allow truck rentals as a conditional use subject to the recommendation conditions in the Community Shopping District, BC3 zoning district. Town council finds the proposed text amendment is consistent with the Town Cama land use plan and finds this amendment to be in the public interest by allowing a compatible use in the BC3 zoning district.
Second.
That was better?
That's good, thank you. Any further discussion?
I do have a comment to make. I remember back when Home Depot came before us and I was on the planning board, it came up at the time, they've always rented stuff there. And they had trucks there that they rented for deliveries and so forth. So I think this is expansion with the Penske trucks, but they've always done this at that same location. So that's one of the rationales I would have for voting for it.
Yeah, it's not you, it's
Yeah.
just, I thought they already had it, but they didn't, so
Right.
if everybody votes aye, then they will have it. All right, we have a motion to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that one's down now. Do I hear a motion to go back into public hearing for the conditional use part?
I move to return to public hearing for the conditional use permit.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're back in public hearing. And if anyone is planning to speak at this one, we have to swear in, including the planner. It's the law. Is there anyone else planning to speak at this? I know no one signed up. All right, Rob, you're sworn.
All right, the conditional use permit application is also from Home Depot. The applicant is requesting approval to establish a truck rental business as an accessory use to the principal Home Depot use at 5300 North Croatan Highway. The operation would encompass as few as 4 parking spaces and up to as many as 22 parking spaces, depending on the season. As I mentioned before, they've got the 22 excess spaces there, and at certain times during the year, they have the Christmas tree sales or an outdoor garden center. And in addition to Mr. Bateman mentioned the other equipment rental they have, they understand that all of that can take up no more than 22 spaces at any given period, and they're good with that. The conditional use standards that would apply, the truck rentals shall only be permitted as an accessory use to a permitted principal business use. Truck rental spaces shall not exceed 6% of the total provided parking spaces, or a maximum of 25 spaces for the principal business use. Truck rental spaces shall only utilize parking spaces in excess of the minimum required spaces for the principal business on site. No additional signage will be permitted for the truck rental use. Rental trucks to customers are to be limited to those trucks requiring Class D or standard non-specialized driver's license. Under operating requirements, the hours of operation are limited to the principal business's operating hours. Rental trucks are limited to the designated areas set forth on the conditional use permit site plan. That area is to be located at the perimeter of the business's parking lot and designated as truck rental spaces. Rental trucks are not to be serviced, repaired, or maintained at a conditional use location. All such service, repair, or maintenance activities are to be conducted off premises In addition, rental trucks will not be refueled at the conditional use location. General cleaning of the interior cab may be required. If the interior of the cab is to be cleaned, all refuse is to be brought back to the business for disposal. Rental trucks left outside of the designated truck rental spaces are to be moved by the business to the designated area within 24 hours. The proposal will comply with all these requirements. And those were the specific requirements that we approved in the previous public hearing. As we mentioned, the subject property is zoned as BC3, and I think a portion of it is BCB, and contains a Home Depot store. The abutting the subject property to the east is the Acock Brown Outer Banks Visitor Center, which is zoned Emergency and Governmental Services. Directly to the south is a portion of the Seascape Golf Course, zoned Beach Residential 1. And to the west is the adjoining Shoreside Center Shopping Center, which is zoned Community Shopping Center BC3, and contains Harris Teeter, Walmart, and a variety of other retail uses. There's also several commercial properties across the highway in Southern Shores. The proposed use, as I mentioned, is a truck rental business, would be allowed as a conditional use. There's going to be no changes to the access to the Home Depot parking lot. As I mentioned, the subject property presently contains 393 parking spaces, which is 22 more than the minimum amount required to accommodate the Home Depot store. On the attached site plans, the applicant has clearly outlined how the number of rental trucks would change with the season and where the various uses would be located on the subject property. In each situation, the number of total parking spaces used by the truck rental, seasonal garden center, and Christmas tree sales is 22 parking spaces. At no point during the year will the number of parking spaces be reduced to below the minimum amount required to serve Home Depot. There's no proposed additional signage. The land use plan designates the subject property as commercial shopping and working area. The planning board found that the proposal is consistent with the land use plan. Per the standards of section 42-99B7, in order to approve the application, town council must make the following findings that are proposed in the conditional use. The first one is that it does not materially endanger the public health or safety. The proposed location of the rental trucks is away from the main internal traffic flow, and there's no other changes that would impact traffic flow or appear to endanger public health or safety. B, does meet all required conditions and specifications. The proposal has been designed to comply with the standards of the zoning ordinance that we just adopted in. C, will not substantially injure the value of adjoining property or be a public nuisance. The proposed truck rental business has been operating on the Home Depot property for some time. The town has not received any complaints about the operation during this time period. The only adjoining property that would be impacted by the proposed truck rental is the Shoreside Center, which is also zoned as BC3 and contains intensive commercial uses. It's unlikely that this would have any kind of negative impact on property value or create any nuisances for their neighbors there. And D, will be in harmony with the area in which it is located and be in general conformity with the comprehensive plan. As I mentioned, the only adjoining property is the Shoreside Center, which contains the large-scale retail uses. There would be kind of a similar intensity of use. The text amendment which was approved, the proposed truck rental use would be compatible with the district. And as a commercial shopping and working area, the proposed use is consistent with the Campbell Land Use Plan designation. Also, at the December 11th, 2014 meeting, the planning board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the proposed conditional use permit to allow truck rentals at Home Depot, subject to the conditions set forth in the text amendment.
All right, thank you. Before I proceed any further, is there anyone having heard that would now like to come and speak before council on this subject? Let the record show no one came forward. All right, councils, anyone have questions of Rob? Do I hear a motion to go back in regular session?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Do I hear a motion to approve or deny this?
Mr. Mayor, I move to grant approval of this conditional use permit application to allow truck rentals as an accessory use at Home Depot, 5300 North Croatan Highway, subject to the conditions recommended by the planning board. Town council concurs with the conditional use findings in the staff report. Finds that approval of this conditional use permit is consistent with the town's adopted CAMA land use plan, and finds that granting approval is in the public interest.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Rob, thank you. Next, we move into planning, and we have a subdivision we've seen until we're tired of seeing it, I think. All right, Rob, you're up again.
The applicant has submitted a revised application and preliminary plat for the West Village subdivision. The plat outlines a proposal to re-subdivide 4 existing parcels totaling 22.31 acres into 30 lots. A new road connecting to Kitty Hawk Road, water line, and underground electrical line will be constructed as part of the subdivision. At its meeting on December 2nd, 2013, Town Council voted unanimously to approve a preliminary plat for the West Village subdivision that was subject to various conditions. The previous approval expired December 3rd of 2014. So this is a new application. It's not an amendment to the previously approved one. Because of the time lapse, it's got to be treated as a completely new proposal. It is very similar to the previous one.
But it's not the same.
Right.
There are differences in this one to what was approved before. So this is a new subdivision plat.
Right.
Okay, let the record show that.
Going through some of the staff analysis for requirements, the proposed names for the subdivision and the new road, both are acceptable. The zoning is VR1. VR1 district allows the density of a single-family residential development proposed for these properties. The VR1 allows 2 dwelling units per acre. This one comes out to be about 1.3 dwellings per acre. Lot size, the minimum lot size in VR1 is 15,000 square feet. The lot sizes for the subdivision range from 15,030 square feet to 89,745 square feet. The wetlands designated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are included in lot size calculations. However, any wetlands classified as coastal marsh under the North Carolina Coastal Area Management Act are subtracted from the calculation of the lot size for those affected lots. Of the 22.31 acres, 9.38 acres, about 42% of it are wetlands. Let's see, in order to construct the proposed road and other improvements as designed, the applicant would be required to obtain a permit from the Army Corps to fill about a half an acre of wetlands in the designated hatched areas on the preliminary plat. All the proposed lots comply with the road frontage standards, 25 feet on cul-de-sacs and 50 feet in all other situations. The minimum lot width in the VR1 district is 75 feet, measured at the front building setback line. The proposed lots comply with this standard. There are a few lots that don't meet the width requirement at the street front, but they widen, and at at the front building setback line, it does meet that 75-foot requirement. The minimum setbacks in the VR1 are 10 feet on the side yards and 25 at the rear and front. All of the minimum building setbacks are properly shown on the preliminary plat. And just as a note, lots 1 and 2 are measured from Kitty Hawk Road as their plan to have access on Kitty Hawk Road and not the new proposed West Village Road. The proposed new road meets the standards to be classified as a local residential subdivision street. However, the applicant has proposed to develop the road to greater standards of a collector or secondary road, which has a proposed right-of-way of 50 feet and additional road easements of 5 feet in width on both sides of the right-of-way. Town standards state that the right-of-way for a cul-de-sac must have a diameter of at least 100 feet. The plat shows a diameter of 102 feet for the cul-de-sac, for the right-of-way. Road width, as I mentioned, it's being proposed as a collector or secondary road. The proposed West Village Road does not have any curbs and gutters, so the minimum road pavement width is 20 feet. The proposed road pavement width meets that, has 20 feet in width with 3-foot shoulders. A note has been added that the road will be constructed to NCDOT subdivision standards. That was requested at the planning board meeting. As proposed, the road is longer than 150 feet. Therefore, the Fire Prevention Code Appendix D requires a cul-de-sac 96 feet in diameter to accommodate emergency vehicle maneuvering. The proposal meets this standard. For the road design, the sharp bend in the road around lots 26, 27, 28, and 29 complies with the accepted design standards for mountainous or hilly terrain with a 20-mile-an-hour design speed. However, this section of proposed road does not meet the standards for rolling terrain with a design speed of 25 miles per hour. The topography of the site has slopes that fall within the definitions of both mountainous, hilly, and the rolling terrains. During the previous reviews, the planning board and town council decided to accept the proposal that the road be treated as a mountainous, hilly terrain, which would allow the tighter curve and a 20-mile-an-hour design speed. The applicant's proposing to install an 8-inch water line to serve the subdivision. It'll connect to a existing 6-inch Dare County water main running along the west side of Kitty Hawk Road. The county water department and NCDENR Division of Public Water Supply will have to grant approval of the plans and specifications for the water lines. The proposal calls for installation of 6 new fire hydrants. Dare County would also have to grant approval of the hydrant locations and the specifications as part of its review. All lots would be served by individual on-site septic systems. Septic permits would be obtained by the health department prior to the issuance of a building permit for each lot. Underground electric lines are proposed for the project. Again, Dominion Power would have to approve plans for that. The applicant plans to apply for a low-density stormwater permit from the NCDENR Division of Energy, Mineral, and Land Resources. And when issued, it's likely that conditions of that permit might limit some of the buildable area on certain lots. That would have to be delineated on the final plat. 2 easements are shown on the preliminary plat, a utility easement. Each lot in the proposed subdivision is subject to easements for installation and maintenance of utilities. The width of the utility easements is 15 feet where abutting roads and 5 feet along the sides and rear of each property. And a road maintenance easement, which is a 5-foot easement extending along both sides of the proposed road right-of-way. It's provided for road maintenance. Listed out a list of potential conditions of approval. Deed restrictions or covenants limiting access of lots 1 and 2 to West Kitty Hawk Road must be recorded. Provide documentation on the location of the slows and lowlands to the Planning Inspection Department. Geotechnical report must be prepared by a qualified company as part of the final design for the base course and road. Copy of the final road design submitted to the Planning and Inspections Department for review and approval prior to grading or construction of the road improvements. An erosion sediment control permit must be obtained from the town of Kitty Hawk prior to clearing and grading activities or installation of any improvements. The applicant must obtain a permit from the Army Corps for approximately a half acre of fill in the wetland areas designated on the preliminary plat, and submit a copy to the Planning and Inspections Department prior to issuance of an erosion sediment control permit. A copy of the stormwater permit from the Division of Energy, Mineral, and Land Resources must be provided to the Planning and Inspections Department prior to installation of any improvements. Dare County Water Department and NCDENR Division of Public Water Supply must grant approval of the plans and specifications for the water lines. A copy of the approval must be submitted to the Planning and Inspections Department prior to installation. All necessary paperwork must be submitted and recorded properly to abandon the existing lot lines and right-of-way. Limb height of 13 foot 6 inches must be maintained over the proposed roadways, and the addresses must be assigned to all properties. Town of Kitty Hawk's adopted CAMA land use plan designates the subject parcels as low-density residential area. The low-density residential area is defined as a density averaging 2 units per acre with lots of 15,000 square feet or greater. The proposed subdivision complies with the stated description for development in low-density residential areas. At the January 15th, 2015 meeting of the Planning Board, they reviewed the proposed preliminary plat for the West Village subdivision. There was a motion made to recommend approval of the preliminary plat. However, the motion failed. While it meets the density requirements, it was a general feeling of the Planning Board that it was too dense for that area. It got a little confusing at the vote that night. The way one of the board members explained it was, regardless of what town council does, they can, that's their opinion, that they don't think it meets the definition of low-density development. And as I mentioned, although the preliminary plat did not gain the support of the planning board, it does meet the requirements set forth in the VR1 zoning district and the subdivision ordinance. So with that, I can open it to questions. The applicants are here. I believe they might have a presentation or.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Michael Strader. I'm an engineer with Quibble Associates. I'm the civil engineer of record for the West Village subdivision project submitted before you tonight. On behalf of PAJA, the preliminary plat submitted before you requests the approval of a 30-lot subdivision utilizing the same roadway and lot configuration approved previously, with the exception of turning lots 1 and 2 to access from West Kitty Hawk Road. The result of that change is that 28 lots will be accessed from the proposed West Village roadway. As Mr. Testerman had mentioned, the proposed subdivision, it's a by right use within the BR1 zoning district and meets the standards set forth in the ordinance and in the town's land use plan. We worked extensively for over a year collecting the survey data, the wetlands data, tree locations, topography, etc., in order to determine how to best subdivide these lots for residential use and meet the intent of the ordinance and fitting our clients' needs. We work closely with planning staff, fire administration, and Dare County Water to achieve this goal and obtain an approval of the preliminary plat in December of 2013. That plat approval has since expired in December of 2014 due to a change in the investment team and the purchaser of the property. So tonight we're seeking approval of it's not an amended, but today's preliminary plat with the full understanding that there's much final design work to be performed prior to any land disturbance being performed on the property. Tonight's preliminary plat approval will allow to provide the applicant with the needed assurance to help close on the purchase of the property and so that they can move forward with the project. I have a lot of boards and presentations and things that I could post on the overhead exhibit. I don't necessarily want to bore you with that unless there are some questions and concerns, but I feel like we can address those questions that you have. I just ask that you allow Warren, Edis, and myself the opportunity to respond to any of those questions that you might have during your deliberations.
Certainly. That's the way it should be. I'm going to start off a couple of questions. So, one of the first questions I have is on Lot 19, page 3. Can you put page 3 up on the screen? All right, there you go. On Lot 19, page 3, I noticed that there's no easement to Lot 5, Jimmy Ray and Deborah Scarborough. That had been put in there in two different ways previously. What is the
Sure.
answer to that?
As you know, that particular Lot 5, that is it's an existing property that does have, it would meet the current code as far as it has access to a public right-of-way. That happens to be on Crenda Lane, Crenda Lane, so that there would be a challenge in access egress across this canal, whereby they would probably consult with the current owners at that time and obtain an access easement across Lot 19.
Corinda Lane is a private road, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
It's not open to public.
Okay.
And if we approve this with no easement to Lot 5, in essence, are we landlocking that property owner? And the reason I asked the question is because get it out here just a minute. Under our section 42-506 lot access requirements, it says no structure requiring a building permit shall be erected on any lot which, and there are three different denominations here, but the bottom line is, if it doesn't have at least a cart road, lane, or other access to a public street or highway, then they would never be able to build onto it.
They would not be able to subdivide that property either, correct?
No structure requiring a building permit shall be erected on any lot which does not have a cart road, lane, or other access to a public street or highway, which access is described in an instrument recorded in the office of the registrar, et cetera. That tells me they would be landlocked and not be able to build. Is that a correct statement?
I would say no. Lot 5 has already been developed.
Lot 5 is what?
Lot 5, Jimmy Ray Scarborough's lot has already been developed. He has a large lot that he could subdivide in the future if he chose to. In the earlier agreements, he had, and I'm not privy to the contract, but they had agreements where they would be provided access so that he could subdivide in the future, which he would have to come before the board and say, I'd like to subdivide, here's how I will access that. But Lot 5 is an existing lot with access off of Corinda. It's not, we're not landlocking it. The lot is already there, it's already being used.
Okay,
It's not that, I'm sorry, but the lot line extends all the way across, so it's a much larger lot.
I
So we're
understand
not-
that. I understand that, but my question basically is if that's a private road, now he owns across that, he'd have to bridge across the canal, is that what would happen?
No, he wouldn't have to. He could seek an easement from the owners of Lot 19. And then he would come before you, because whatever he does, he's got to come and prove to you that he's got the ability to subdivide regardless of where his access comes from. But yeah, he could build a road across Corona Lane or a bridge. So the applicants here are kind of clear that.
My name's Eddie Goodrich, and the only substantial change, according to the planner, is that lots 1 and 2 now front on Kitty Hawk Road. And the only reason that we did that is so that 28 lots come off the new road, and Mr. Scarborough and Mr. Corbell will have access, and we will grant them an easement, and Ms. Scarborough has that in her hands right now.
You will grant them, and he has it in his hand?
Yes, sir.
Well, all right. Let's go to lot 26. And I'm looking at all the wetlands on lot 26. And I'm asking you, where is the buildable lot on that?
I think it's time I need to bring up the presentation board for you. This should also be in your packet, but this is just simply a preliminary sketch plan. It shows, potential building pads, septic areas, to show the constructability of all of those lots. And you had asked about 26, which would be this particular lot. And those may be a conservative estimate of the size of those numbers. I think we used it right in 40 by 40, and then I think these are 30 by 50 on this particular sketch.
Where is it on 26? This is 26, right here. That little piece right there,
Yes, sir.
that's a buildable lot. Okay.
That's showing an example of a 3-bedroom home, 3 apartment spaces, active and prepared for wet wastewater system.
Mayor and ladies and gentlemen, I just want to point out that I feel like we're looking at these plats, and I just want to bring your attention to the fact that they're 1 inch equals 80 feet. So when you look at this plat, it's small, it looks small, but it's 1 inch equals 80 feet. It's almost double the size, that we normally see, and I think it's due to the nature of the property. It's such a long property, nearly 22 acres. So conveying all this information on a scale like 1/40 or so that I'm more used to looking at, it's a little counterintuitive to look at this and say, well, that's a tiny little area, but it's a whole lot bigger. So we've tried to call that out. So anywhere where you see that, let's just keep in mind that it is a very small scale.
Well, yeah, I understand that. It says 1 to 10,000 plus is what it's talking about here on your scaler, but the proposed wetland fill, let's go on page 2. In one place there, you've got crosshatch, proposed wetland fill is a half-acre total. When you say total, do you mean total of all the road, including page 3 and the cul-de-sac, which has an awful lot, even though it's a small scale, I understand that.
Yes, sir. And half an acre is the maximum we would be able to apply for. We actually anticipate being able to shrink that number, but at this stage in the design, we don't have the ability to fine-tune it. And we have to go through that exercise with the Corps of Engineers and with the Division of Water Resources. It's an avoidance and minimization process. So we have, as we proceed through that permit, we have to prove to them that we need what we're gonna ask for. Half acre is all we're gonna be able to ask for under their nationwide general permits, and that's all we propose to ask for. We hope to bring that number down. There's economic reasons and other reasons why you do that, but there won't be any more than that. We're able, by doing that, just as a scenario, anyone can fill a lot. Section 404 wetlands, which are governed by the Corps of Engineers, you have the right to fill 1/10 of an acre under their regional permits. You have to apply, and give them a good reason, but the permits have already been written, they're written every 5 years. The Corps likes to see that when you plan a subdivision, you go ahead and do what, you show them what you're gonna do. Because they don't want every property owner to come back and say, well, I'm gonna fill my 1/10 of an acre, and then Rob's gonna, you know, he's lot 26, he's gonna fill his 10th. Next thing you know, you filled 3 acres of wetlands. What this does is it shows them, we can do this whole subdivision with 1/2 acre or less of fill, and that's what they allow. It's a nationwide 14 permit.
No property owner, no individual lot. Because all you're showing here is hatched areas for the road.
Every lot can be built upon and permitted without the need for fill.
All right.
We've had to take into account, I personally conducted the wetlands delineation, I conducted the canals delineation. Both of those items have been reviewed and approved. We based all our stormwater design on a soil scientist report that went over the whole site, and I don't know how many soil borings he did, but in excess of 50 to 60. So we've based all this information on, you know, real data. We haven't just come in and said, well, we can just throw this on here and get 30 lots. This is very detailed, and
This would be a lot easier if it wasn't so intense.
Sure, and
That's the
there's a lot-
problem.
There's a lot of factors in that, and we feel like that the density is spelled out pretty well in your ordinance, and we follow that.
On this new plat, and we're looking at it as a new plat, the town engineer at the December 2 meeting was concerned that there were what he called sloughs that could be easily covered up and not taken into account. And what he wanted was that those sloughs be identified on the plat and recorded so that they wouldn't be clandestinely filled. Have you shown those sloughs here anywhere?
Those sloughs are accounted for in this particular sketch plan, and it shows those sloughs based upon that licensed soil scientist report. And what I had provided to Rob prior to the planning board meeting was a copy of that licensed soil scientist report and that document that has those sloughs, which I'm not sure how you go about recording it, but if it needs to be on the final plat, it can be recorded on the final plat.
Anything that's jurisdictional wetlands has those protections in place. If someone calls something a slough, I don't know if slough meets the definition of a section 404 wetland or not. There's places where you can walk around and it's a wetland and you wouldn't believe it, but that's the definition of a wetland.
Yeah, I was in that development meeting with the town engineer and other members of staff, and what he was concerned about was the on-site wastewater systems. So that's why I refer to that exhibit, because that exhibit shows all of our proposed wastewater setbacks for the various standard conventional wastewater systems, and then your TS2, your more advanced treatment wastewater systems. Those sloughs, they have their own setback. They have setbacks just as if they were wetlands.
Anyone else have questions?
No, the business of the sloughs, I remember that from last time. And I had the impression that the engineer was satisfied with what had been done prior to the council meeting, if my memory serves. Is that correct?
That was our understanding. We took them into account when planning any of the wastewater systems. Dare County Health Department's also going to come out and inspect each one, so we're not going to be able to permit a system in a low area.
Yeah, but that's after the fact. He wanted the sloughs recorded on
On
the plat.
on the
So that
plat.
it couldn't be filled before the health department's called.
I see.
So, I mean, you gotta get ahead of the curve, not behind the curve. I have another question that deals with the road. The road was under a lot of conversation when we reviewed the first plat. And there was a question about the curve in the road. If you'll pull that up, I believe on plat 2. Yeah. The hilly terrain, and I've walked that, so it's mostly up and down, and it goes pretty much straight down to a ditch on one side, which eventually goes to basically a stream. It's not a ditch anymore, but it's a stream. And the canal on the other side, which does the same thing, and both of them eventually go to Kitty Hawk Bay. So the question on the road had to do with speed limits and whether or not that bend should be straightened out. And we accepted it last time based upon the fact that we didn't like it. None of us liked it, but we accepted it. We're taking a fresh look at it, having walked the land, and wondering if that's a good plan, or would an alternate that straightens that road out so that you don't have people doing 25 miles an hour and then suddenly having to come down to 20 onto a curve of that nature in hilly terrain. What say you to that?
Sure. Basically, that proposed subdivision roadway, that had been designed in accordance with NCDOT subdivision roads, the minimum construction standards. The town's ordinance specifies in section 38-129 that all curve, tangents, K values, minimum centerline radii, and other essential road design elements shall be designed in accordance with the standards found in the current edition or revised of NCDOT publication, subdivision roads, minimum construction standards. Based upon that actual topography defined as hilly terrain, and that's why I give you these exhibits. We prepared this particular exhibit, I believe we did this prior to that council meeting in December of 2013. What we did is we created a shaded hatch to show you where those slopes in excess of 15%. And what that means is that's the definition of hilly terrain in DOT subdivision roadway construction standards. So based on the topography, that actual topography being in excess of 15% slopes in that area, the horizontal curves of the roadway were designed with that minimum, with that design speed of 20 miles per hour. And the centerline curve radii at 90-foot radius or greater. Just for education, and I can put these on the overhead so that everyone can see, but these are excerpts from DOT subdivision roads. That's the table that everyone refers to when they're referring to the construction standard. What I'm trying to highlight here is that hilly definition for the minimum centerline radius is 90 foot for that hilly terrain, which that's what we would qualify under in this case. There's also references, what did I have? That's AASHTO. It's more of a nationalized, but it's the same 20 mile per hour design speed, 90 foot centerline horizontal curve radius. Just an excerpt out of your current town code. We understand that there are some roads that already have that designated 20 mile per hour design speed. Under a private roadway scenario, it would actually be even a tighter radius of 60 foot. That's not what I'm pursuing here, but I posted just so you can see. And then your town engineer, he's had an opportunity to review it, so I put that on there too, just so that to refresh my memory. He had seen and understood that what we had proposed did meet all those minimum construction standards.
All right,
Yeah, I do have a question about that. I remember a previous time, we needed to approve the selection of, it said the proposed road does not meet the standards for rolling terrain design with 25 mile per hour. So, but during the review and approval by both the planning board and the town council, the decision was to accept your proposal that the road be treated as mountainous hilly terrain. And that is consistent with DOT guidelines and the actual slopes that you're talking about. So, does that assume that it's being approved again? Is that what you're asking, to revisit that, to see if,
that's what I'm bringing it up for,
okay.
yeah.
So we'll just talk about that again in the discussion, or now?
Well, we're not in a public hearing, so we can
Okay.
ask the question and even discuss it. So it wouldn't be inappropriate to do that.
So I guess what you're saying is that at a second look, you think that this speed limit reduction to 20 miles per hour based on the actual terrain that's involved here is not something that you would want to approve again, or?
Well, and that's why I raise it up. So the question is, would you want to approve it again? And if you don't, then it would be part of the motion to not do that. Is it, any further questions on that?
Well, this also has an impact on the total amount of fill, right? Because you're using the existing terrain to not, in effect, have to mess with the
Yes, that-
terrain there, and
That's what that list of key points.
so right now, the total that you have for your, for the fill that you're anticipating for this whole subdivision is a half an acre, correct? And changing this would change that number as well.
That, and it would potentially increase land disturbance, having to knock out some of those higher ridges that we were
Trying to preserve.
We were trying to help balance the ridges from the lowlands, and that's one of the methods that we use. I mean, you could think of it as a mass balance of the earth.
Straight road would inevitably, we'd either be going up and down severely, or we would be cutting the tops of dunes and filling in between. We also felt like the curve added some aesthetics to the subdivision. It's something we talked about, and I think some of you all even agreed. I remember we had some compliments, because we're also, this model of putting in curves and lowering the speed limit is not a new idea. It's something that's being done all over the world to slow people down. We tend to build these big, flat, straight roads and tell people you can only drive 25, but they roar up and down. We end up, and then we come back and we put signs up and we put speed bumps and we do other things to slow people down. It's been shown that, you design it so that they have to go slow. It doesn't necessarily make it unsafe, it makes people go slow.
Well, if you're looking for an opinion, my opinion is that I'd rather see them preserve the existing terrain than start chopping off the, tops of the.
All right. Any further discussion?
About anything? Can I just ask, when we talk about the Lot 19, and at one time, we had talked about a right-of-way for the purposes of being able to subdivide this parcel. Is a right-of-way being talked about, or an easement?
It's a 30-foot easement.
A 30-foot easement? Thank you. That's all.
All right. It's time now. Go ahead.
Well, the easement now, when I went back and I looked at what had been done previously, I thought that the easement, they wanted a minimum and a maximum size of 20 feet. Remember that?
Yeah.
And so, what is it? We
Well,
want
we don't
30
know.
or 20?
All we know is what we've been told tonight. We haven't seen anything, it's not platted anywhere. So we have no clue.
In speaking with Jimmy Ray and Ada Scarborough throughout this process and the potential purchasers of the project, we understand that there may be some time in the future where Jimmy Ray and Sanford may decide they want to subdivide their properties, which are existing and extend across Corinda Lane. They haven't disclosed to anyone what they would want to do. We don't have the data to know if they can do it. However, they've said, we want to preserve that right. So in preserving that right, it's my understanding that they've got a contract and an amendment to the contract where they've said that if you sell us the property, because they don't own it yet, they can't do anything, we can grant you an easement, and whatever it is you decide you've got to do, you've got to go back to the town, and if you want to subdivide, you have to show the town that you can do it. As it is right now, we can't say what it is they want to do. The 20-foot easement, if I remember correctly, I think we asked for 30, and you said, we understood that if we showed it on the preliminary plat, that would lock in rights that may or may not be there. That was my understanding of it at the time. So what we were trying to do is let that play out in their contract. We're not trying to take anything away from anybody. We're actually making accommodations so that if they do want to do it in the future, they've got that chance.
So is the easement been identified where it's going to be or anything on it's lot 19 that's affected? Is that it?
Yeah, I don't have, we haven't finalized the position.
You're just saying that part of the contract will include that there will be an easement granted. That easement would have to be put in place somewhere on that plat in order for the owners to pursue that if they wanted to do something.
We are doing everything we can to do what Scarborough's want and Mr. Corbell. That's why we, again, turned the 2 lots, 1 and 2, that face Kitty Hawk Road, which allows 28 lots on the new road. And then the 2 lots that Ms. Scarborough and Mr. Corbell own. And we will give them a 30-foot wide easement, and Ms. Scarborough has that in her hands right now.
So when you say it's a 30-foot easement, you haven't actually located it on that lot at this point, or not?
We can put it anywhere
But they
works the
want it.
best for them.
Okay.
Well, if I may, I'm Jay Wheelis, I'm a lawyer in Matteo, and I drafted that amendment, which has been given to Ms. Scarborough, and we intentionally kept that, I don't want to use the word nebulous, but fluid. We committed to them that we would give them an easement from the southerly terminus of whatever cul-de-sac might get approved to the northern edge of their property of a certain width of wherever we could accommodate it according to the plat and terrain and wetlands and so forth. So we tried to, we've had a definite commitment to do it, but the where, we needed to leave a little fluid because of this meeting and such other meetings as may come before us.
So
Can you, just to clear me up, a 30-foot easement, you can subdivide? It doesn't have to be a deeded right-of-way, is that correct?
I believe so. That's what was shown on the previous preliminary plat, was an easement.
But how about the revised, after the first preliminary one, then there was the discussion from Mr. Scarborough about the wants to subdivide. And so then the revised one came, and if I'm not mistaken, it showed an actual right-of-way going through Lot 19 onto Lot 5. And now, and doing away with the easement, because the easement that was shown back then was actually through wetland, and it really wasn't a very good easement back to his property where it was located. So he wanted an easement that he knew that he could get back to his property without having to go get a whole bunch of wetland permits. The original easement was not a very good way to get to his property. You would have to go through wetland. So the revised one showed a nice way to get back to his property, and now And not only do we not have an easement, we don't have a right-of-way either.
Well, an easement, I think you can get an ingress egress easement, and it's like the same thing as a right-of-way, only it's not public.
It is. They're the same thing.
Yeah, that's,
One sounds more important, but it's not.
yeah, but I mean, it gives you the same rights.
They both give the right to use the land of another person for the purposes that are outlined in the document. Now, what you might be talking about is a conveyance of the ground itself. No, there could not be that. That would be some sort of other subdivision problem. We'd be having another lot there that would be used for access. But this would be a right to use the ground, over the ground, utilities, things of that nature,
And-
whatever they might need.
And they understand that they're not going to be able to subdivide that lot and to give it to each one of their children. They understood that.
I have not spoken directly to them. I've only spoken to their lawyer.
Well, not only that, they can't build on it under our code, 42, section 506, lot access requirements.
So it doesn't allow for a private ingress egress easement in our code?
Oh, it
has to be
it
to a-
says, unless it has a cart road, lane, or other access. So it doesn't care what the access is, but they have to have some way. If you're going to build a house, you can't be landlocked and not
Yeah.
get to it.
Oh, I totally understand that, but my understanding of an ingress egress easement, which I happen to have had on one of my properties in the past, is that the people that have that easement have the right to always use it to access their property. And the whole thing was brought about by someone who had landlocked property. And as it turns out, there's a law that says you basically have to give them an easement if they're landlocked. But that easement was what they needed to get to and from their property.
May I say something? The reality of the situation is, until somebody spends about $400,000 to build a road from Kitty Hawk Road back to Lot 19, the land owned by Mr. Scarborough and Mr. Corbell is financially not feasible to develop, because it would just cost $100,000 probably to build a bridge to get across. So it doesn't make any sense. So until somebody builds a road that's gonna cost around $400,000, they don't have a reasonable and feasible access.
To that property right now.
That's the reality of it.
Okay. All right, anyone else got questions? All right, so we either have to approve or we have to deny, and if we're going to deny, we need to base it on something. So I'm going to float a motion and see if it gets a second.
If it gets a second, can the second be for purpose of discussion? Or if I have something else to say right now,
Once we have a
Once you
if
have
we
the-
have a second, then
if
there
you
will
have
be
a second,
discussion.
there would be discussion.
Absolutely.
May I say a few things shortly? I'm going to be very brief. Kitty Hawk Woods is protected. The state of North Carolina owns practically all of it. The town owns a bunch of it. I know this is not very popular, but it's, there's about 3,000 people that live in Kitty Hawk, and I think we need to do what's important for the town of Kitty Hawk rather than something a few people simply don't like. Only one person spoke against it tonight. If you look at the layout, I don't think there'll be a house within 150 or 200 feet of any of the neighbors, and that'll be through the woods. And nobody has to go down the new road to get to their house. And so, again, I realize it's somewhat unpopular, but all we intend to do is build 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom houses for families. They'll have children. I don't see any of this is not going to be a rental neighborhood. It's going to be a year-round neighborhood. And there may be some people that buy a house and use it as a second home and hope to retire one of these days. And that's what it will turn into. And I just appreciate y'all hearing it tonight. Thank you.
All right. All right. Motion to deny approval based on, 1, the development plat exceeds the intent and purpose of the 2003-2004 adopted land use map in that a majority of the property is listed as conservation, and lot density exceeds the policy stated under Land Use Plan Policy Number 12F as written in the CAMA Core Land Use Plan Update of 2003-4 and adopted on April 6, 2005. 2, and here, let me pass this out. And 2, the intensity of the proposed development conflicts with Land Use Plan Policy Number 12A in that numerous platted lots and the proposed road will have a negative impact upon adjacent natural hazard areas, specifically flood-prone wetland. The intense quantity of proposed field areas for the road and subsequent individual lots is inconsistent with Land Use Policy Number 25B and will have negative impacts upon water quality to adjacent canals and natural streams that empty into Kitty Hawk Bay, a habitat for maturing shrimp, crab, and numerous fish species. And 4, the plat does not show the sloughs on the plat as identified by a soil engineer and is strongly recommended by the town engineer. Do I hear a second to that? I'll second that, Mr. Mayor. The floor is open for discussion.
Well, my comments are directed at what I saw in the packet. It said that, whether we like this or not, it was consistent with the town's standards. And from my point of view, an applicant has only the standards to go by, which are in the subdivision chapter of the town code. If those standards are met, I think at that point, the applicant has done his part of the job. Now, what I don't know is that with the curvature of the road, which was discussed and needed to be approved, if that is not approved by the council, and what was the one other thing? Well, the easement sounds like it's under control. I just don't believe that an applicant, once those standards are met, he has a reasonable justification or expectation of approval. How would he know what the other conditions are that are being proposed in amendment, in addition to the standards? That's all I have to say about it.
All right. Any other discussion?
Well, I got to say this. The other developer came before us, and, I called him, and he was a friend of mine. And I expressed then my desire for that this piece of property was overdeveloped. And I was as sincere as I possibly could be. It was too developed. I bought this property many years ago when I was a boy, going to see my Aunt Jenny, Rex Henley. We used to go over there, and we bought that property. It's wetlands. It's all wetlands. Now, your engineer comes up and just done a great job in putting the facts together for us. I expressed a desire at that time that I was not supportive of this, and I have to have the same desire to express now that I'm not supportive of it at this level of development. If you came back with a less intense development, I would be maybe in favor of it. But like I said, the last 2 meetings, I've done that same thing, and I can't retract from that. You do a great job in your development, so I'm not, it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with that at all. It has to do with this piece of property and the fact that the topography of it would not handle this development, in my opinion.
Great.
I agree. Everything you just said. We discussed it last time. We had the same things last time. It's just too much on that piece of property. It's not good.
Yeah,
I agree.
the intensity of it.
I think it's just too intense. If, after you put in the road and use the majority of your highland, 2 acres almost is going to be the road. It's almost 50% of the total project's going to be wetland. I think that's, for 30 houses with a 50% wetland, I think that's too much.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The motion passes. It's denied. All right, new business. Leland Street Beach Access Parking Improvements. John, are you
Mayor.
going to take this?
Yes, sir. On East Little End Street Beach Essex Parking Improvement Project was advertised and bids were received on January the 14th, 2015. The town has applied for and was awarded 2 grants. One was from Diener in the amount of $52,941, and one from the Tourist Bureau in the amount of $17,647 for a total of $70,588. Bids were opened on January 14th here at the Town Hall, and 2 bids were received. One was from RPC in the amount of $59,600, and one was from Barnhill in the amount of $56,420. The bids have been reviewed by our engineer, Mr. John DeLucia, and he recommends the award of the contract to Barnhill with an added contingency of $4,000 to give us a total of $60,420 in the event that we do have a need for contingency. But we don't anticipate any, but it's basically a safeguard. So we're asking council for approval of the contract, of the bid.
The first question I have is the contingency. It's not something we normally see in here. And if you add the contingency, in my experience, contingencies generally tend to get used, which makes the Barnhill contract higher than, not by much, but certainly higher than the RPC. Was the RPC contract,
He would recommend the same thing for the RPC. If the RPC was lower, he would also recommend a contingency.
he would?
Yes, sir.
I don't remember seeing those in the past.
Is there any reason we can't approve this without the contingency and?
No.
I mean, we can handle a difference
We
if
could, we
something
could,
comes up?
we could do that if there is a need
It-
for
Does it
an
look
amendment
funny
to
to
the
anybody
contract.
else?
We can do that later.
Huh? It just doesn't look right.
Okay, no problem. That's not a problem, Mr. Mayor.
All right, yeah, I don't like the way that looks. Perception is everything. All right, so I'm going to recommend somebody make a motion, but I'd like for you to leave out that contingency.
I move the approval of the lowest bid for the East Lillian Street Beach Access Parking Improvement from Barnhill Contracting Company in the amount of $56,420. I further authorize the town manager to sign and the town clerk to assess said contract.
A second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now, you have another report, John.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. just to give you a council update on where we're at with coastal planning and engineering and their progress. They have completed 92.4% of their work for the storm damage reduction project. CP&E has completed additional work on project management, development of environmental documents, beach field design analysis, and data analysis associated with the offshore sand search. In addition, we will be meeting with the engineers, county staff, and representatives of the other towns tomorrow in Kill Devil Hills for a planning meeting. And so that's where we're at as far as that project is concerned. Also wanted to mention, we received a compliment from Seascape Beach and Golf Villas concerning a recent workplace violence workshop that was conducted by Chief Johnson and investigator Brian Strickland. The workshop included how to respond to violence, becoming aware of sex offenders, and how to respond to guests carrying weapons. Mr. Rick Spohr, who's the general manager for Seascape, was very complimentary of this workshop. And that's all I have this evening, Mr. Mayor.
All right. And we have a substitute town attorney. Did the regular leave you with anything for us?
No, no comments.
Just left town? and
He just
plugged out?
left and stuck me here. So, no, I thank you for the introduction. My name's Casey Barnell, for those who don't know me, which is everybody. So,
All right. Well, we're glad to have you anyway.
thank you very much.
All right. Town council. Jeff, you have anything?
I don't.
Craig?
No, sir.
Irv?
Yes, sir.
No.
I don't have anything either. All right. The last public comment. Does anyone wish to speak at this final public comment? Everybody want to go home? Let the record show no one came forward. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.